Hello and welcome to Prescott Talks, brought to you by Prescott E-News. I'm your host, Brooks Compton, and today our special guest is City Councilwoman Connie Cantelme. Connie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brooks. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, tell us a little bit about, for the new voters out there, a little bit about yourself and your personal life.
Well, about myself, let's see. Well, I came to Prescott, Arizona. My parents lived here. My father was a lifer in the Air Force, so I'm an Air Force brat. Grew up in the military, kind of lived out of the United States for quite a long time. Lived in Athens, Greece, and England, and I was born at Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota. Anyway, my father came through Prescott sometime in the 60s and fell in love with it. So when he retired in 72, we moved to Arizona. And then shortly after, my father ended up here in Prescott with my mother, and I stayed in the Valley and was on my way to school. So went to school down there and got married and had my child and, started a business. The business took off right away. I owned a design build firm for almost 40 years in the area, did completely exclusively custom homes, and had a thriving design business as well. So did that, came up to Prescott. I don't know, let me see, I've been here about 18 years now and bought a little place down on Pleasant Street. I was going to build in Dewey, actually, on a couple of acres I had, and we thought we'd stop in Prescott while we got all that together. It was the recession, and we kind of got hurt with the recession in the building industry. But anyway, we enjoyed being downtown so much, we decided to stay. So fast forward, I've now renovated. I got a little bored when the recession was happening and bought several very beautiful historic homes that had been let go. So we started restoring those, and I've got 14 finished and 13 of them in the downtown area now. Different phases, some major construction, some just renovating and cleaning them up, but beautiful properties, and put them out there for sale. And we actually have taxpayers in those properties now. So we enjoyed it. But I have enjoyed that down in the Prescott area, especially downtown here. I love the downtown area. I've been involved in a few infrastructure projects as well, and just making sure we maintain our historic flavor. But that's been my interest in Prescott, Arizona. Got involved in the city because of that issue.
So not just professionally, but personally, you've been involved in redeveloping downtown already.
Yes.
And so you know the pitfalls about what's happening.
Yes, I do. I have done lots of projects here. But again, trying to honor the history. And we had at one time, I can remember being here. In fact, I lived in the Marks House, if you know where that is, right up on Union.
Yes.
Back in the early 80s for a short time. And, I think the history just wasn't really honored at that time. So a lot of the homes had started to deteriorate. Well, it kind of bothered me when I came back because I had time to really notice how many there were. We had kind of a thriving, drug rehab business here. And a lot of the homes were sober living homes, and they just weren't taking care of them. So whenever one came available, I would try to buy that or encourage a friend to buy it, and we would restore those. And it was so satisfying to see the streets start to turn. I mean, the whole street. Once you do one on one street, other people will come in noticing that the street is starting to renovate, and they will participate in that too. So it's been fun to see, especially my street up on Washington, North Pleasant Street. I did 3 on that. I did 1 on South Pleasant Street. Probably the one that a lot of people would know is the old Church on the Street buildings that are in Cortez and Carlton on the corner. I bought that, both of those buildings, the old chapel and the corner house several years ago now, and renovated both. And I started another business, my third, and it was called the Prescott Wedding Chapel and Event Center. And now those properties are beautiful again. And it's a thriving business, so great for the tax basis.
So would you call yourself an entrepreneur?
Yes, I've actually started 4 businesses in my life. So I started out with my design business, and then very quickly that kind of morphed into construction. I really found a interest and a clientele that needed my expertise. So I became a general contractor in the early 80s and started a design build firm, and stayed busy for 37 years, almost 40 actually, if you include the few years as a designer, and really enjoyed it. I worked down in the Valley primarily then. And then, as I said, during the recession, decided to move up here permanently.
Well, how did you transition into local government in your current position? Tell us a little bit about your history there.
Yeah, so dealing with the city and the building department, the community development department, was a little frustrating experience, especially for somebody like me coming out of the valley, where I had to deal with Paradise Valley, their community development, Scottsdale, the city of Phoenix, and the community development department here was lacking a little bit at the time with the historic preservation. And so I was a little frustrated by that. So I started kind of dialing in. And then I have now served on 8 boards, by the way, under 4 mayors. My very first board membership was on the homeless solutions under our Mayor Kuykendall. And part of that was, again, getting back to what caused me to get involved, was the fact that we had quite a homeless problem downtown. And you remember I bought my first little place on Pleasant Street. So we walked downtown many times, and it was really becoming a problem with the neighborhoods, especially after dark. So I got involved there, and then just one thing led to another, and I've been on several boards and commissions over the years at the city, very dialed into our economic development and supporting our businesses. They are our tax base, in the downtown area. What we generate is pretty amazing, and so we need to really protect what we have down here. We need to protect our preservation, our history, making sure that our businesses are viable and safe. So that was a big part of me being involved. So I got involved in the boards and commissions that had a lot to do with economic development.
Okay. What have you done in reference to our police departments and our fire departments? Any involvement there before you were on the city council, and maybe while you are on the city council?
Well, I got to tell you, I do follow that, and I followed the PSPRS issue very closely because I have a son who's a firefighter and 3 children. He's married, and he wants a retirement someday. So I was very dialed into our debt, and I watched that debt skyrocket over the years. When I first started taking notice of it, we were about 16 million upside down. And I watched it skyrocket to over 80 million. So I was very concerned in that. And I started going down to speaking at the council, about our problems and what are we going to do about it. And then at the same time, several people got involved. And of course, we passed that 443 to help the PSPRS. And we're doing really well with that. But I have been dialed into that. And then right after I got on the council, actually right before I got on the council, I was made aware that we had lost 23 policemen in 1 year in 2022. And I was very alarmed by that. So I started asking questions, simple questions. What's happening? There was a combination of reasons. Several did retire, but we had a problem. We'd lost several policemen to other municipalities that were up here headhunting our policemen. And there were various other reasons. And you know how the country is right now towards police. And we're just not like that up here. We support our police and fire, and we need that. We have a community full of retired people, and we want to be safe in this community. So anyway, I gathered all my facts, and I went into our former city manager and basically said, we're below the curve here. We've got to pay these guys, please. I asked for a 10% raise. I did not get that, but we did get a 5% raise across the board during that time. So that brought our police force and fire up to what all the other municipalities were making in the area. So I was very happy for that. I'm 100% supporter of police and fire. We need those guys in this community. We want them to be healthy. What they go through on a daily basis, I don't think the average person even has an idea what they go through, especially in our community where we have, a jail, basically. And we're dealing with a lot of the parolees that come out of the jail. We've got a retirement community that needs services. We strive for a 5-minute response time. We don't have that right now because we need some more police stations. So yeah, I've been very dialed in that. I meet with the chief of police and the chief of the fire department quite often just to find out what I can do and stay dialed into that. So that's very important for me.
So you certainly have been involved in our community for quite some time. And,
yes.
Tell us a little bit about your involvement with the airport and how you see that growing and the challenges we're facing with the airport.
Well, it's interesting. I'm a part-time host at KYCA, and I have a little show called Prescott Has the Most Interesting People. And I brought on the show our airport director, Robin Sabata. So as I do before many shows, I do research. And I found out that this is documentable, that at that time, the airport had 87 crashes in the crash zones on the end of the runway. And so we talked a lot about that. And as the issues with the AVO started to arise, it became apparent to me that we were not protecting our splays, which is at the end of the runway, where most often, not always, but most often the airplanes will crash. So I thought, why are we allowing building developments to go in and be built in these crash zones? And
that is surprising that they were allowing that to happen.
Yeah, in fact, when the AVO made the news and everybody was kind of, trying to figure out what it was, we had a crash that May. And that's exactly where that airplane crashed, was in that same, that splay, what we're going to call the crash zone or the impact zone. And so I'm supporting that AVO. Especially at the end of the runways. And so the city, we're in negotiations right now with some of the developers to try to basically claw that back so that we do have those areas for the airplanes to, if they have to crash, they've got to have somewhere to go. And it'd be better if it wasn't in a church or a nursery or a housing development. So we're looking into all of our options, and hopefully we'll have that taken care of this year.
Well, in terms of economic development in downtown, you certainly sound like an expert. You've been involved. You know what you're doing. Do you have any plans for how to bring economic development downtown?
Well, I think by cleaning up our neighborhoods, because remember, the one thing that people come here, as you know, our tourism has grown exponentially over the last several years. But again, people have to feel safe. We've got to make sure that the courthouse plaza stays relatively clear of a lot of homeless population or any dangerous population for that matter. But we've got to support our businesses. And by doing that, we need to make that community beautiful and safe. And we want to attract people here to spend their money here with us at our restaurants, our businesses. One of the things I found out when I owned my church on the street, or the Prescott Wedding Chapel there, through my business, we had to make sure that at night, especially, our streets were safe, because I had people come there for weddings, maybe attract 100 people, and they take off walking downtown. They want to enjoy our historic neighborhoods. So part of our economic development is making sure our community is clean and safe.
Well, since we're on the topic of economic development, what are your solutions for blight downtown?
It's interesting you should ask me that, because in 2016, I compiled a packet that I gave and distributed to the council at the time. And in there was a picture of about 15 blighted properties in the downtown area. Now, remember, I was at the time purchasing and renovating homes. But when you start to renovate a community, or let's just say you start with a street, the cancers on the street are the very, very heavily deferred maintenance homes. And those are the ones that will hold back the renovation of a neighborhood. So the city at that time, and that was another one of the things at the city, I was asking them, what was interesting is I brought a copy of the blight ordinance down with me, but I also brought a copy of the highlighted charter. And in the charter, it basically told the council at the time that they don't get to cherry pick the ordinances that they are going to enforce. So I didn't get anywhere. But now fast forward today, we have a new city attorney, and he's been very, very strong on this. And so we are right now working on that ordinance. He has beefed up the code enforcement. In fact, he brought the code enforcement department back into his office so that we'll be able to now go after some of these bad actors that really need to just clean up their properties for the benefit not only of the neighborhood, but for the benefit of our city. We've got to have these neighborhood blights cleaned up because it helps everybody. And again, as I told you, many of the blighted homes at that time that I was looking were they just uninhabitable. Nobody could live in them. They were in such bad shape. But because I was in the construction industry, I actually liked to get them like that because I could, clean them up and do to the interiors what I wanted to do. But I wasn't getting at the time much help from the city in terms of code enforcement of getting the people to clean up the trash around their property. Trash is bad for a lot of reasons, but why we were allowing these very important historical bungalows to deteriorate. That's our history. We need to protect that. And by the way, if you're receiving a tax benefit, let's say your home is on the historic register and you are receiving a tax benefit, you receive that tax money from the community because you are basically, it's an unwritten rule, you're preserving that property for the benefit of the community. So we have to be able to enforce that. And as I said, our new city attorney, Joe Young, is working on that currently. And we are going to basically get tough on some of these blighted properties for the benefit of the community.
Well, if the voters want to reach you, they want to get a hold of you and your campaign for your continued service on the City Council, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, we're working on our website right now. We should have that up in about 2 weeks. But you can look me up on the internet, Connie Cantelme. I'm pretty much out there for a lot of the issues I've been involved in. And I would sure love to have your vote. And I hope you'll vote for me. Vote for experience. Thank you.
Well, Connie, thank you so much for being our guest on Prescott Talks.
Thank you.
And we wish you the best.
Thank you, Brooks. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You.
I'm Brooks Compton, your guest host, and once again, thank you for tuning in to Prescott Talks, and this will be an ongoing series interviewing all the Prescott City Council candidates. Have a good day.